Rain fell hard over the battlefield as smoke curled into the sky from ruined machines and shattered bunkers. The ground was black from fire and thick with ash. Bodies lay still, broken armor gleaming under the stormy light. In the center of the chaos, something massive was breathing heavily, like a furnace about to fail. It was not human. Its skin was plated like a tank, its claws thick and sharp like swords. Its body was soaked in red and green blood, some of it its own. The alien beast roared in pain and slammed a fist into the earth. But even that strength was fading fast. No one dared go near it. The soldiers had retreated, afraid of both its power and its poison. Even the enemy had left it alone, thinking it would die in a few minutes. But someone was still moving toward the beast. A single human ran through the smoke, a bag slung across his shoulder and a light blinking on his wrist. His name was Drew, a field medic from Earth. He wasn't armed. He wasn't tall. He had no armor. But he was fast, and more importantly, he was the only one who had stopped when the others ran. His orders were clear: leave the battlefield, save yourself. But Drew didn't follow orders today. He saw the war beast crawling, dragging itself with one hand, the other twisted and glowing with some kind of alien venom. Its thick red blood oozed from wounds across its body. Its mouth, full of tusks and fire, was hanging open in silent agony. Drew crouched beside it. The beast turned its head slowly. It could have crushed him in a single move. But it didn't. Its golden eyes blinked with confusion and pain. It growled low, but didn't strike. Maybe it knew. Maybe it could smell the difference in Drew's heartbeat. Drew pulled out his scanner. The screen blinked with alien symbols unreadable, but the flashing red circle told him enough. The beast had minutes before the poison reached its brain. Whatever hit it wasn't just acid. It was something made to kill slowly. He looked at the wound again. A bite mark, deep and oozing green. His gloves weren't strong enough to filter the toxin. He had only one option, and it was insane. But insanity was all they had left in this war. He dropped his bag, pulled off his gloves, and leaned in. The war beast stared. Its muscles tensed. Its claws scraped the ground. Drew ignored it. He pressed his mouth to the wound and sucked the poison out. His throat burned immediately. He spit it out, black and thick as tar, and sucked again. Then again. Each time his head spun more. His vision blurred. But the wound began to change. The green stopped spreading. The red returned to the skin around. Drew's lips bled, but he didn't stop. Not until the scanner blinked yellow instead of red. He sat back, dizzy, his hands shaking. The beast still stared at him. Something strange happened in that moment. It exhaled softly, like steam leaving a cracked engine. Its giant head lowered, not in defeat, but in something like understanding. Drew fell to his knees. His vision was swimming, his chest burned. The poison had touched his blood, even in small amounts. He opened his medical kit and injected himself with an antidote that probably wouldn't work. The beast moved. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to shield him from the rain. Its huge arms stretched forward, claws digging into the mud, protecting the fragile shape of a human beside it. A drone buzzed overhead. The beast snarled but didn't strike. It stayed still, like it knew more violence would only bring more fire. Drew didn't speak. He couldn't, but he raised one hand slowly to the beast's head, barely touching its armored jaw. Something had changed. The war beast, made to destroy tanks and level cities, was now breathing because of a human. And for the first time in the war, it didn't know what to do. Drew woke up to the sound of breathing, but it wasn't his own. It was heavy and rough, like an old machine struggling to run. His head throbbed, his tongue was dry, and his chest felt like fire. He reached for his bag, but it was gone. The beast had moved. It now sat behind him, watching silently. Its huge body was still injured, but the poison had stopped spreading. Drew blinked a few times, trying to remember where he was. Then it all came back: rain, blood, venom, and the impossible thing he had done. He tried to stand, but his legs shook. The beast leaned forward, lowering its body as if ready to catch him. Drew froze. For a moment, he thought it might crush him. But the creature stayed still, almost calm. Its gold eyes were sharp, but not angry. Something had shifted between them. The war beast, built for killing, was no longer acting like a monster. It was watching him like a soldier watches another soldier. Drew couldn't explain it, but he felt it deep in his gut. This thing didn't see him as prey anymore. Suddenly a voice came through his earpiece. It was static at first, then clearer. "Medic 14, respond. You're in a red zone. Are you alive?" Drew fumbled for the mic on his collar and pressed the button. "Alive, injured but stable. Subject alive too." There was silence on the other end. "Subject? You mean the Zarnak beast?" the voice said. "Repeat, you're saying it's alive?" Drew glanced back at the creature. Its tail flicked, claws digging lightly into the mud. "Yes, it's not hostile, not right now." More silence. Then, a new voice came on the line. Cold. Higher. "Rank, this is Commander Vole. Stay where you are. Extraction inbound. Do not engage the creature." Drew nodded, even though they couldn't see him. "Understood," he said. But the beast growled low, its ears twitching. It could hear something coming too, above them. A ripple passed through the clouds. Dropships. Drew recognized the engine sounds. They were fast, too fast. The kind used in surprise attacks. The beast rose slightly, sniffing the air. Its muscles tensed again. It didn't trust the sound. Drew stood with effort. "They're not here to hurt you," he said, not sure if the beast would understand. "I asked them to come." The beast didn't move. It just stared at the sky and let out a single deep breath. Not fear, not anger, just readiness. Dropships landed hard, sending waves of dirt into the air. Soldiers poured out, weapons raised. The beast growled and stepped in front of Drew. Its massive body shielded him completely. The soldiers hesitated. They didn't shoot, but their fingers were tight on triggers. One officer raised a hand. "Stand down," he shouted. "We're here for the medic and the subject." Drew stepped beside the beast slowly. "It's not attacking. Don't give it a reason." The officer nodded, but kept one hand near his blaster. The tension was thick. Two medics rushed forward and helped Drew onto a stretcher. He didn't resist, but he looked back at the creature. "Don't shoot it," he said firmly. "It's not just an enemy anymore." The officer didn't answer, but gave a short wave. The soldiers lowered their guns. The beast stood still as they lifted Drew into the dropship. It didn't run. It didn't roar. It simply watched. Its eyes locked on Drew as the doors closed. For the first time, Drew saw something in its face that he never thought possible from a war beast. Sadness. Inside the dropship, the medics hooked Drew up to a scanner. "You're lucky to be alive," one of them said. "The venom should have killed you." Drew didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the window, staring down at the shrinking figure below. The officer spoke again over the comm. "We'll send a drone to monitor it. But if it turns hostile, it will be eliminated." Drew closed his eyes and shook his head. "It won't. It made a choice. Same as I did." No one replied to that. The war wasn't over, not even close. But something had changed today, not in strategy, not in politics. In something deeper, in trust, in possibility. In the space between two living beings who were never meant to understand each other, and yet, somehow they did. The transport ship flew over the battlefield, carrying Drew and his team back to the command center. Inside, the medics monitored his vitals while the ship's engines hummed steadily. Drew's body was weak, but his mind stayed sharp. He couldn't stop thinking about the beast. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it again. The wounds, the confusion, the moment it stood between him and the soldiers. That wasn't just survival instinct. That was something else. Something he couldn't name, but it had changed him. The ship landed quietly in the medical bay. Drew was wheeled out and taken to a clean white room. Machines beeped softly, tubes connected to his arms. A nurse spoke gently, telling him to rest, but he couldn't sleep. His thoughts raced with images of war, poison, and yellow alien eyes. Hours passed before anyone important came to speak with him. A woman in a dark uniform entered the room. She didn't smile. Her rank badge was silver, her voice flat. "I'm Director Kale of the Joint Command Council. I'm here about the Zarnak beast you treated." Drew sat up slowly. His chest ached, but he nodded. "It's alive," he said. "I saved it." Kale didn't blink. "We know. We've been tracking its movement. It hasn't left the area. It's not hunting. It's waiting." Drew frowned. "Waiting for what?" Kale looked at him carefully. "For you." Those words struck him harder than the poison had. Drew stared at her. "That can't be true," he said. "It doesn't even know me. I'm not its kind." Kale crossed her arms. "Yet it hasn't moved more than 5 meters since you were taken away. It hasn't eaten. It hasn't attacked. It's just watching the sky." Drew leaned back in his bed. The connection he had felt wasn't in his imagination. It was real. The beast was waiting, not for revenge, not for orders, but for him. And no one could explain why. Kale continued. "High Command wants to observe this further. You're being transferred to Outpost Virex. It's near the location where the beast is resting. If it responds to your presence again, we'll consider it more than a wild animal." Drew didn't hesitate. "I'll go." The next morning, Drew was on another ship, this time escorted by a small group of quiet soldiers. None of them spoke during the ride. Drew could tell they didn't understand why they were doing this. They didn't trust the creature, and they didn't trust him either. Outpost Virex was a cold structure built into the rocks. It overlooked a dead forest and a blackened field. The beast was there, just beyond the ridge, curled under a broken transport it had dragged for shelter. It didn't move when the ship arrived, but its eyes opened. Drew stepped out first. The wind was cold. The smell of burnt soil was still in the air. His boots crunched over dead grass as he walked toward the edge of the outpost. No weapon. Number. Armor. Just his uniform and steady breath. The beast stood up. Slowly, carefully. Its body was still healing. Its movements were heavy, but not hostile. The soldiers raised their rifles, but Drew lifted his hand. "Wait," he said. "Let it come." It did. One step at a time. No growling, no charging. It moved like it remembered where it had left off, as if their story wasn't finished yet. When it reached Drew, it stopped just meters away. Its eyes studied him again. This time, there was no pain in them, only recognition. Drew didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just knelt on the ground, never breaking eye contact. The beast responded by lowering its massive body, mirroring him. The soldiers were silent. No one moved. For a moment, there was no war, no noise. Number. Sides, only understanding. And then the beast did something no one expected. It opened its mouth, not to roar, but to let out a deep rumble that almost sounded like a word, a sound that vibrated the air. A tone not of anger, but of peace. Everyone felt it, even those hiding behind guns and walls. This was not a monster anymore. This was something else, something becoming more. Drew stood face to face with the beast, and the world around him seemed frozen. Soldiers behind him were holding their breath. No one could believe what they were seeing. This was not how war beasts acted. This was something new. The war beast slowly lowered its huge head. Its breathing was calm, not wild. Its claws, though sharp, were tucked into the ground. The same creature that had torn through vehicles was now waiting in silence before a human. Drew reached into his pouch and pulled out a small scanner. He carefully activated it and aimed it at the creature's chest. The screen blinked, showing slow but steady readings. The poison was truly gone. Healing had begun. The beast had survived, but what came next wasn't just about survival. Drew spoke gently. "You're not just muscle, you're thinking. Learning." The beast tilted its head. It made a soft growl, not aggressive, almost like a question. As if it wanted to understand what he meant, the commander inside the outpost watched everything from behind the glass. She turned to her communication officer and whispered, "Record this. Every frame." The officer nodded, already documenting the event. Nothing like this had happened in recorded galactic warfare. The war beast took a step forward. Drew didn't move. He didn't flinch. The creature leaned in until its breath brushed his chest. Its eyes scanned his face. There was no hate, no hunger. Only curiosity and something more complex. Something like trust. Drew slowly raised a hand. The soldiers behind him tightened their grips on their weapons. One whisper was enough to start a panic, but no commands came, no one fired. They were all too stunned to act. Drew's hand touched the beast's armored jaw. It was warm. The beast gave a low sound from its chest, not a growl, not a warning. A rumble that vibrated the earth around them like a heartbeat made of thunder. Drew kept his hand steady. "You remember me," he said softly. "You remember what I did for you." Suddenly the commander's voice came through the speaker on Drew's collar. "Return to the outpost. Now." Drew didn't move. "It's not dangerous," he replied. "It's aware, it's listening." The speaker buzzed with static, then silence. No further orders came. A second later, a supply drone flew over them and hovered above. The beast's eyes followed it cautiously. Drew raised both hands and waved gently. "It's not a threat," he said toward the drone. "Don't provoke it." The drone shifted its path and backed away. Drew took one step back. The beast watched but didn't follow. It sat down slowly, its long tail curling around its legs. It was waiting again, but this time not for help. It was waiting for a sign, for purpose. For something Drew hadn't yet understood. Inside the outpost, the commander leaned forward over the table. She studied the live feed. "Prepare an observation zone," she ordered. "And no weapons near it unless I say so." Her officers looked at each other in shock. "Ma'am," one of them asked, "you want to protect it?" She nodded once. "This thing isn't just an animal anymore. It's a witness. Maybe even a key to ending this war." Drew finally returned to the outpost. He looked over his shoulder. As the steel doors closed behind him, the beast remained still outside, like a silent guardian of the valley, not moving, not growling, just waiting in peace. Later that night, Drew sat alone in the observation room, reviewing the footage. Frame by frame, he watched his own face and the eyes of the creature. There was emotion in those alien eyes, not random, not instinct, something deeper than survival. He leaned forward and whispered, "What are you becoming?" But no answer came, only the sound of cold wind hitting the outpost's steel walls. He stared through the window again, where the shape of the beast was still resting under the stars. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the hills, artillery echoed like faint thunder. The war was still raging. But out here, in this quiet space, between enemies, something was changing, and no one knew what it would lead to. The sun rose slowly over the valley, casting golden light across the burnt trees and shattered ground. Drew stood by the observation window, holding a warm cup in both hands. His body was healing, but his thoughts remained tangled. Outside, the war beast stretched its limbs. It moved carefully, its massive muscles shifting under thick armor-like skin. It hadn't left the edge of the ridge. It hadn't attacked anything or anyone. It just waited near the outpost like a silent watchman. Every day, Drew visited the same spot. No walls, no weapons. Just him and the beast. He brought water, small tools, and even strange food cubes from the mess hall. At first, the beast sniffed them with suspicion. Then it began to accept them. The soldiers called it foolish. Some called it dangerous. But no one stopped him. Even the commander had begun to see this situation as something special. A quiet experiment in the middle of war. One they didn't fully understand but were afraid to ruin. By the 5th day, something remarkable happened. Drew arrived carrying a small communication pad. It played sounds, voices, and images. He activated a simple message in his own voice. "Friend, safe, peace." The beast tilted its head, eyes glowing softly. He repeated the message each day. "Friend, safe, peace." At first, there was no reaction. But on the 7th try, the beast let out a low hum, not a growl. Not a warning. A steady sound like it was trying to copy the tone. Drew's heart raced with hope. He began playing other words, simple phrases, names of places, pictures of stars. The beast watched everything. Its eyes followed the shapes. It reacted to the colors. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was remembering. Back inside the outpost, scientists reviewed the recordings. A biologist named Ren tapped the screen repeatedly. "This thing is showing signs of advanced neural learning," she said. "It's not just hearing. It's choosing what to respond to." Another officer leaned over the console. "So what does that mean?" Ren looked up. "It means this. Creature was never just a weapon. It was always something more. Maybe they trained it. Maybe it evolved. But it can think. It can choose." Word spread fast through the base. Some soldiers became nervous. Others were amazed. But most stayed quiet, unsure what to feel. This was new. This was bigger than any of them had expected. Even the war seemed distant now, like it had paused outside these walls. That evening, Drew approached the beast again. This time, he sat down completely. He placed the pad between them. The beast moved closer and lowered its giant head. They sat like that for hours, the machine's voice repeating, "Friend, safe, peace." Suddenly, the pad made a strange sound. The beast had tapped it with a claw. The screen flickered. The message replayed. Drew blinked. "Did you do that?" he asked softly. The beast gave a short, quiet grunt and tapped the pad again. Drew laughed in disbelief. "You're learning," he whispered. "You're actually learning." The beast didn't answer, but it didn't need to. Its actions spoke louder than any words. In that moment, it was not a creature. It was a student. Back in the control room, Commander Kale watched silently. Her hands were clasped behind her back. "I want it protected," she said. "Whatever happens next, it must not be harmed unless absolutely necessary." Her officers nodded without question. "Send a message to High Command," she added. "Tell them we may be looking at the first real bridge between species." And it started with a medic and a monster on a battlefield. Outside, the stars began to rise. The wind carried whispers through the valley. And still, the beast sat beside the human, quiet and thoughtful. Neither moved much. Neither spoke. But between them, something invisible had grown strong. It wasn't just peace, it was trust. The valley remained quiet for days, as if the war outside had forgotten this place. Drew continued his routine, meeting the beast near the ridge every morning. The soldiers kept their distance, but their eyes never stopped watching. The beast responded more now. It stood when Drew arrived. It touched the pad carefully with its claw. It listened closely to the recorded phrases. The words were simple, but their meaning was growing stronger each day. Friend, safe, peace. They weren't just sounds anymore. They were a bond. The creature didn't speak, but its body moved with purpose. Its head would nod slightly. when Drew said the word peace. It would sit when Drew said safe. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was learning. Not like a pet, but like someone remembering who they once were. Drew sensed it every time they met. The beasts. Movements were calm now. Not once had it shown anger or fear. Then, just before sunrise on the 10th day, the alarm inside the outpost began to ring. Red lights blinked through the corridors. Drew ran to the command room, still pulling on his jacket. "What's happening?" he asked. "Another attack?" Commander Kale stood in front of the main screen. Her face was tight, eyes sharp. "A Zarnak battle group has entered orbit. No warning, no contact. They're sending landing ships. 4 of them heading straight for this location." Drew felt his stomach drop. "They're coming for the beast," he said. Kale nodded. "Most likely, it's theirs. Maybe important, maybe dangerous. But they're not waiting for permission. They'll be here in minutes." The soldiers around them began preparing weapons. Mechs powered up in the lower hangars. Defensive turrets rotated toward the sky. The whole outpost changed in seconds. Calm had ended. War had returned. Drew looked. Out the window. The beast was standing tall at the ridge. It stared into the sky, body tense. It could feel them coming. Its people, its past, but it didn't move toward them. It didn't roar. It just watched. "I have to go to it," Drew said. Kale turned sharply. "You'll be killed." He shook his head. "It trusts me. If I stay here, it might think we abandoned it. If I'm out there, maybe it won't fight. Maybe it won't have to." Without waiting for approval, Drew ran. Down the stairs, through the steel gates, and into the open. The wind was stronger now, charged with distant engine hums. The beast turned as he approached, letting out a soft, low sound from its throat. Drew placed a hand on its side. "There. Coming for you," he said, "but I'm not leaving." The beast made no sound in reply. It didn't look afraid. Only alert, ready, but not violent. Its eyes flicked toward the sky again. The ships appeared moments later. 4 dark shapes slicing through the clouds. They landed in perfect formation across the dead field. The noise was deafening, but the beast did not flinch. Drew stood beside it, heart racing. The first Zarnak soldier emerged. Then another. Dozens stepped out, their armor gleaming, weapons raised. They formed a wall, but they didn't fire. One of them stepped forward, larger, armored in black and gold. A commander. The war beast growled softly, but didn't move. The Zarnak commander raised a hand. Then, to everyone's surprise, it spoke in the human tongue. "You should not be beside it. That creature belongs to us. Stand aside." Drew didn't move. It made a choice. It stayed. It learned. It saved me. You may have created it, but it is not your slave. The commander tilted its head, eyes narrowing. "It is a weapon, nothing more. You have confused it with your mercy." The beast took a step forward. Its mouth opened, and it released a deep shaking cry. Not pain, not fear, a sound filled with meaning. A message no translator could explain. It raised its massive head high and placed one claw in front of Drew. It was choosing again. "Commander," Kale's voice came through Drew's earpiece. "We're watching everything. If they open fire, we'll strike." Drew kept his eyes on the beast. "No, not yet. Let it speak its truth first. Let it be more than what they made it." And in that still moment, surrounded by weapons and soldiers and warships, the silence held. The beast had spoken. The Zarnak commanders stared at the beast, unmoving. Around them, dozens of armored soldiers stood with weapons drawn. Yet none of them fired. The sound the war beast had released still echoed across the field. It was not a command. It was not a threat. It was a declaration. Something ancient, something raw. And every Zarnak on the battlefield recognized it. Not just with their ears, but with something deeper. Something in their blood. Drew remained still, standing beside the beast. His heart pounded, but he didn't step back. He knew what that cry had meant. It was a choice. It was a refusal to return to what it had been before. A weapon, a tool, a slave. The Zarnak commander slowly lowered his hand. His golden helmet tilted slightly to the side. "You have been altered," he said to the beast. "The human has poisoned your mind with emotion." The beast let out a short growl in reply. It wasn't a denial. It was defiance. The soldiers behind the commander shifted, waiting for an order. But none came. The commander took another step forward. "You belong to us," he said firmly. "You were born in our chambers, forged by our science, bred for war." The beast moved slightly, standing taller. Its large body stood like a shield in front of Drew. Its claws pressed gently into the soil, but its eyes didn't burn with rage. They shone with clarity, with purpose. It knew who it was now. Drew took a breath. "Maybe you built it," he said. "But it decided who it wants to be." The commander's gaze shifted to him. "You speak for it now?" Drew shook his head. "No, it speaks for itself." And it already did. There was silence, a deep pause. The clouds above rolled slowly. The war machine stood idle. Then, behind the commander, a new Zarnak stepped forward. Smaller, younger, female. Her armor was silver with a red stripe. She held no weapon. Her voice was calm. "Let the creature stay," she said. "Let it choose. We claim to be the superior race. Prove it by accepting its will." The commander turned sharply. "You forget your rank," he snapped. "I remember it," she replied. "And I remember our code. Honor, discipline, purpose. If this beast has chosen another path, we must not force it back into the old one." For a long moment, the commander said nothing. Then he lifted his chin and turned away. "So be it," he said. "Let the creature stay with its human. But it will no longer be Zarnak. It will never return to us." The female soldiers stepped back. The others lowered their weapons. Slowly, without turning their backs, the Zarnak forces began to return to their ships. Engines roared back to life. The battlefield softened. Tension broke like ice beneath the sun. The commander was the last to leave. He gave one final glance at the beast, not with hate, not with pity, but with loss. Then he entered his ship, and the ramp closed behind him. The sky above filled with dust as they rose into the clouds. Drew fell to his knees. The relief hit him like a wave. The beast moved beside him and gently lowered its massive body to rest near the human. Their shoulders touched, even if their forms were nothing alike. From the outpost, cheers erupted. Soldiers shouted. Scientists hugged. Commander Kale's voice came through the cum. "You did it," she said. "You stopped a war without firing a single shot." Drew smiled, breathing hard. "We did it," he replied. "Together." The beast gave a quiet rumble, low and calm. Not a warning, a sound of peace. A sound of thanks. One that echoed through every soul watching from behind glass and guns. Above them, the sky cleared for the first time in days. Stars peeked through the fading clouds. The light touched the ridge and lit the figure standing there. One human. One former war beast. No longer enemies. No longer strangers. Something had changed forever, and it had only just begun. * 3 weeks had passed since the Zarnak forces left the valley. The war beast had not moved far from the outpost. It remained close to Drew, like a silent shadow watching over him. Its wounds had fully healed, but it chose to stay. In the days that followed, more visitors arrived. Scientists from across the galaxy, journalists, peace envoys, even alien historians came to witness what was now called the Bond at Virex. Drew had become a symbol of something unexpected. Hope. The beast was now called Core, a name given. by Drew after hearing the sound it made most often. It had become more than a beast to the people at the outpost. It helped move supply crates, cleared debris from damaged buildings, and even sat through translation sessions. Core listened closely during these sessions. It repeated short words and matched symbols with sounds. No one forced it. It chose to learn. It chose to be part of something greater than destruction. The name War Beast was no longer used. Drew had been offered a return to Earth, even a medal. He refused both. He stayed at Virex, working with Core daily, helping others understand the journey they had taken. He gave interviews, shared recordings, and answered every question with honesty. When asked why he risked his life, his answer was always the same. Because no one else did. And because something in its eyes told me it didn't want to die. Not as a weapon. Not alone. A council was formed to decide what would happen next. Representatives from over 30 worlds met at the outpost. Some feared what Core represented. Others wanted to study him. A few even demanded his destruction as a possible threat. But Drew spoke before them. He told the whole story, every step. From the battlefield to the ridge. The scans, the venom, the touch, the silence, the choice. He spoke not as a soldier or scientist, but as a witness to something deeply real. Then, without warning, Core entered the hall. It moved slowly, respectfully, lowering its massive body and placing one claw over its heart. The delegates fell silent. Some stood in fear, but Core didn't growl. Didn't move forward. It simply knelt. That one act changed everything. No one argued after that. The council voted, and by majority, it was decided that Core would remain at Virex as a free being, not a prisoner. Not a test subject. An ally. A new kind of citizen. A symbol of peace. The day of the announcement, the outpost held a gathering. Flags from many worlds were raised. Children from the nearby colonies came to see Core. The beast stayed still, allowing them to touch its thick hide and trace the glowing lines on its skin. Drew stood beside it, smiling gently. For the first time in his life, he felt like the war inside him had ended too. Not just the war in space, but the one that made people believe enemies could never change. As the sun set over the valley, Drew climbed the ridge one last time. Core followed him, stopping beside the same rock where they first met. Together, they watched the horizon. No words, just wind, light, and quiet understanding. Drew looked up. "You've come a long way," he said. "So have I." Core responded with a soft rumble, low and warm. It didn't need words to speak anymore. Its presence said enough. In the distance, new ships arrived. But they were not warships. They carried builders, teachers, and explorers. Peace was beginning to spread, not through force, but through example. One act of mercy had started something unstoppable. Drew placed a hand on Core's side. The stars began to appear in the sky above. And for the first time in many years, no one feared what came next. Together, they had rewritten the end of a story that was meant to be tragic, and replaced it with something no one had expected, a beginning.